Hey, welcome back to the Amplified Podcast. My name is Jac Carnett, and I will be your host for today. We are going through a couple of really fascinating chapters in the book of Numbers. Sometimes these chapters can seem a little bit dry, and it's because we're going through a lot of the sacrifices that we don't, perform anymore. A lot of things offered up by smoke. What can be offered up? What cannot be offered up? What should we eat? What should we not eat from these sacrifices? But all of that was done away with and fulfilled with Christ's death and resurrection. So a lot of these can be a little bit dry, but today is very different. We're going to look through some wild passages in the Bible today. So I don't know if you can see this in my Bible, but you can see all kinds of writing over the edges, just because when I was going through this, I wanted to understand it as best as I could to my knowledge, so that hopefully I can explain it well to you guys. But today we're going to go through Numbers chapter 31 and Numbers chapter 32. We're going to look at some maps. We're going to see how God is dealing with the Midianites and with Moab as a whole, and what happens when you mess with God's people. And so if you want to go ahead and open up your Bible to Amplified, or I have the Amplified text, of course, or Numbers 31, there are no, at least at the time of this recording, there is no Alabaster Bible for the book of Numbers, but soon we're going to be in the book of Samuel. We're going to be in the book of Psalms, and I know for a fact they have Psalms, and I think they have the book of Samuel out already. They definitely have Genesis and Proverbs, and so either way, they're phenomenal books, especially if you're reading the Bible for the very first time. And so I highly recommend finding those, and you can find the link to those in the description below. Hopefully someday they'll be a sponsor. So, okay. The last couple of chapters we looked at what it meant to break your vow. Who's really responsible if someone else makes you break your vow? We talked about, the different feasts that they're going through. There's 7 feasts in all, 7 major holidays. And I was talking to you last time about how I really don't understand the trumpets. Like, what is the purpose of the trumpets? I think I may have gotten a little bit into... I can't remember. It's been a couple weeks since I recorded. I may have gotten into, what trumpets in the earliest form of technology could have done. There are old stories about people being able to move large amounts of stone and heavy things with golden trumpets. Obviously, we see the trumpets being blown later on in the book of Joshua, and that causes the walls of Jericho to fall down. I'm sure there's a lot more going on than what we really understand today. But my grandfather reminded me that trumpets, all of these are both remembering things that have happened, but they're also prophetic for the future, that the Lord is going to tabernacle with us. That's the Feast of Booths. We have the Holiday of Atonement, that it's celebrating the atonement that all of those lambs made when the people were leaving Israel, but it's also prophetic for what Christ would do later on. And so the Feast of Trumpets is no different, where we saw, them celebrate leaving Egypt. I'm sure they were blowing trumpets. They were having a great party. But later on, when Christ returns, we will hear those trumpets once again as Christ returns to take his bride back to heaven. And so all of these are prophetic in nature. They're not only pointing to something that happened, but something that, at least in their moment, was also going to happen later on in the future. And so, so much in the Bible, man. Even if you have a master's, you can miss all kinds of stuff. So hopefully you're understanding these chapters better now as we're going through them together. And hopefully we can say the same for chapter 31 today. So, short recap. Remember that the Midianites and Moab were scared that Israel was going to swallow up the whole area. They had taken out, the nation of Bashan with Og and their king, and Sihon with their king, the giants. They had taken them down. And now these Midianites, sorry, my grandfather's texting me right now as I'm recording this. So they should, I totally lost my train of thought. Oh, they're totally concerned about the Israelites coming in and wiping them out, which is a legitimate concern. So we saw King Balak, and we saw his prophet Balaam. And Balak wanted Balaam to curse Israel. They didn't like Israel. They were afraid of Israel. They didn't want to be dominated by Israel. But every time Balaam walked up to the line to curse Israel, he could only say what the Lord was telling him to say, which was blessings time and again. This was right in the middle of when Israel was once again behaving in idolatry. This may have even coincided with the exact time when the Simeonites were kind of leading the charge of sleeping with all these Moabite women and perverting the worship of the Lord. Because you have to remember, so much of this pagan way of living, I'm thinking about the movie Apocalypto and just like the raw, like blood eating, nature of these people groups at that time. A huge part of their celebration of their gods was going on in sexual idolatry within their temples and everything. And what Israel was allowing was Moab's women to come in and bring that same culture that God was trying to remove from them into Israel, and it was going to corrupt all of Israel. And if all of Israel was to be corrupted, then there would be no savior that would come along, and there would be no hope for us today. So God had to deal with them in a strict manner. He was patient, merciful. He did all of these things for them, but time and again, Israel wanted to turn their back on him. And so, of course, the guilty parties paid their debt, and we saw that a few episodes ago. And so now it's time for Israel to strike. Moab tried a couple different ways, but now it's time for Israel to strike him. I'm going to stop quite a bit to kind of explain what's going on throughout all of this. So I'll read the first thing that I wrote in my Bible, which was on behalf of Moab and Midian in the chapters that we've read before. This was a coordinated effort to spiritually compromise and corrupt Israel. Moab initiated, but Midian really bears the bulk of the responsibility. And so if attacking them flat out didn't work, then they thought, let's use subterfuge. Let's corrupt them from within. If that doesn't work, we'll call on our gods. Each of these times, it's never really succeeding. I mean, much of Israel paid the price for, sleeping with the women of Moab and everything. But obviously, Israel is still strong. I mean, they left Egypt with 601,000. They arrived at the Promised Land 40 years later, I think, with 603,000. It should have been way more than that, honestly. God was faithful to them to at least keep them where they were. But it should have been way more than that. We don't see population stay the same unless something's going wrong. Population should always be increasing, and increasing more than 2,000. So here's what it says. Let's dive into chapter 31. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Take vengeance for the Israelites on the Midianites. Afterward, you'll be gathered to your people in death." So this is Moses' final war. Moses spoke to the people, saying, "Arm men from among you for war, so that they may go against Midian to execute the Lord's vengeance on behalf of Midian, or vengeance on Midian for seducing Israel to participate in idolatry." And that was back in Numbers 25, if you want to watch that episode. 1,000 fighting men from each tribe of all the tribes of Israel you shall send out to war. So out of the thousands of Israel, 1,000 from each tribe were selected, 12,000 armed men for war. Moses sent them, 1,000 from each tribe, to the war, and Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the priest. So remember, you have, that just went backward. Remember, you have Aaron, who is high priest. And then underneath him, his son was, we just read it 5 seconds ago, Phinehas, the son of Eleazar. So we had Aaron, then we had Eleazar, who became high priest, and now we also have Phinehas, who will be the high priest. And Phinehas is a good guy. He's the one that stopped the plague that the Simeonites really jump-started. So they made war against Midian just as the Lord had commanded, and they killed every male. That's the nature of war. That's the nature of what they were involved in. This was one of the people groups that God wanted to make sure their influence was nowhere near Israel. They killed the kings of Midian along with the rest of their slain, Evi and Rechem and Zur, the father of Cosbi, Hur and Reba, the 5 kings of Midian. Also Balaam, who we talked about a moment ago, of Beor, they killed with the sword. The sons of Israel captured the women of Midian and their children and all their cattle and all their livestock and all their property they took as the spoils of war. They burned all the cities where they lived and all their encampments with fire. What we're about to see is it's going to escalate even more. And you have to remember that this was capital punishment against the Canaanites who were guilty of everything that we talked about in Leviticus 15 through 21. All the gross stuff that I kind of gave, parental advisory for, that, even we today would blush at, that we would be horrified by most of these things. That's what they were involved in. God was explicitly telling them not to do those things because the people groups around them, that's exactly what they're doing. You have to think about, I thought the house of David did a great job showing, what the king of Ziklag, king that Saul was supposed to kill. I'm suddenly forgetting his name. I'll remember it in a moment. But their pagan king that he was supposed to wipe out. I think they did a really good job showing just the level of depravity that those people had sunk down to. That not only were the men involved, but the women were involved. And oftentimes, and I wrote this in my Bible as well, that children will bear the consequences of the sins of their parents. That it's not fair. It's not right for those children. But there's a level of evil that you can get involved in where it's no longer just on you. It's on the entire generation. It's upon the generations that are coming back to you. It's heavy. And this is just a side note. I thought about this as well, that, Moses is the only old man left in Israel. Because you have to think the entire generation from Israel that came out of Egypt that was over the age of 20 years old has now died out in the wilderness. That was God's judgment against them for rejecting him, for rejecting everything that he wanted to do, for not trusting him, for just not believing that he is who he says he is. So now you have to think the oldest person in Israel at this point is 60 years old, except for Moses, who is at this point, probably him and his wife, 120 years old. So, I can't imagine what it's like spending all day with people half your age, let alone being 120 and everyone else is 60 years old. But that's also what Moses is going through here as well. So leadership is heavy. This was capital punishment against the Canaanites that were guilty of everything we saw in Leviticus. So the time for pity and the time for grace has now come to an end. They have had generations and generations to turn from their wicked ways. It says this: they took all the plunder and all the spoils of war, both people and livestock. Then they brought the captives and spoils and the plunder to Moses and Eleazar the priest and to the congregation of the Israelites at the camp on the plains of Moab by the Jordan River across from Jericho. And we'll look at where that was in just a moment. It's really cool how sometimes you see Israel represented by their size. And so we see Judah is going to receive a very large portion of land, while Benjamin receives a small portion of land. But then other times we see each tribe represented equally. And I wrote this in my Bible as well, that much like the House and the Senate here in the United States, sometimes Israel is represented equally, 1,000 men from each tribe, and sometimes they are represented according to their size. And so we give to each tribe according to their size, the allotment and everything. And so God is fair on every level, at least in this case, I'll say. It wasn't fair that Jesus died for us, but he did anyway. Then they brought the captives. We read that. It's okay. Verse 13. Moses and Eleazar, the priests, and all the leaders of the congregation went out to meet them outside the camp. But Moses was angry at the officers of the army, the commanders of thousands of hundreds who served in the war, and said, "Have you let all the women live?" Now, that seems harsh, but here's what Moses is about to back it up with. Look, these are the women who caused the Israelites by the counsel of Balaam to trespass against the Lord in the matter of Peor. And so a plague came upon the congregation of the Lord. This is back in Numbers chapter 25. I want to read just again how many people died in that plague as a result of these women right here. Nevertheless, those in the plague who died numbered 24,000. 24,000. So 24,000 people, men, women, and children died because of the actions of these women. So it's not just the men that are guilty in this case. It's the women that were the ones seducing Israel at the same time. Again, this was a coordinated effort a while back to bring Israel to its knees. And Matthew Henry, who's an incredible commentator upon the word, he said this: the sword of war should spare women and children. That's correct. But the sword of justice should show no distinction. Oftentimes we want to feel like an overwhelming sense of pity because of what's going on in the Bible. We see, children dying. We see women dying. We see, the most vulnerable of society, it costs their lives, whatever's going on. But we're not talking about just war at this case. We're talking about justice. What is right in this case? What is just? I don't know how else to explain it, but Moses said this: now therefore kill every male among the children and every woman who is not a virgin. So, but all the young girls who have not known a man intimately, keep for yourselves to marry. So they will be integrated into the society. And if they can see the Lord as the loving and just God that he is and turn away from their wicked ways, then they'll be treated with the same blessing and the same love as anyone else that has grown up in Israel. But it seems harsh. But you have to remember that angry boys grow up to be angry men. And that's part of life. It's part of life. These men would have already been passing down even the most heinous practices that they had within their community down to these young boys. And angry boys grow up to be violent men. And so I think that's a big reason why we see this. And ultimately it's God's judgments through Moses. And we know that God is just. So it goes on to say this, verse 19, camp outside the camp for 7 days. Whoever has killed any person, whoever has touched any dead body, purify yourselves and the captives on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. You shall purify every garment, every article made of leather, and all the things made of goat's hair, and every article made of wood. Then Eleazar the priest said to the men of war who had gone into the battle, this is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded Moses. Only the gold, the silver, the bronze, the iron, the tin, and the lead. Everything that can stand the fire you shall pass through the fire, and it shall be clean. Think about like when you're making jelly or making jams. You have to put the jars into the oven for a certain amount of time and heat them up so that it kills off any bacteria that may grow in the jelly later on. I think it's a simplified version of what we're seeing right here, and possibly on a spiritual level. That all of these coins and all of this stuff had been used, no doubt, for sinful practices earlier on. So now it's all going to pass through the fire. It's all going to be purified. Nevertheless, it shall be purified with water of purification to remove its purity, and all that cannot stand the fire, such as fabrics, any kind of wool, any kind of things that would have just been burned up, you shall pass through water again to purify it. You shall wash your clothes on the 7th day and be clean, and afterward you may come into the camp. And we remember all of that stuff from Leviticus about, those who have touched a dead body or killed something have to purify themselves for 7 days. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, you and Eleazar, the priests, and the leaders of the fathers' households of the congregation are to take account of the spoil of war that was captured, both the people and the livestock. Divide the spoil into 2 equal parts, those who were involved in the war and those who went out to the battle, all the rest of the congregation. So again, it's not as though those that went out to war get to keep all the spoils. They have to share it with all of Israel. But 12,000 among 600,000 is actually a pretty small percentage. It's 5% of Israel? 5% of Israel that actually went out to war is going to get to keep 50% of the spoils. The rest are going to divide up the other 50% of the spoils. Levy a tax for the Lord. Yes. Levy a tax for the Lord from the warriors who went out to battle, 1 in 500 of the persons, the oxen and the donkeys and the flocks. Take this tribute from the warriors' half and give it to Eleazar the priest as an offering to the Lord. So they get to keep 50%. This little 5% of Israel gets to keep 50% of the spoils. And from them, not 1%, not 0.5%, but 0.2 of 1%, they are going to give up. And so the Lord is being overwhelmingly fair here. From the Israelites' half, so the other 50% of the spoil, you shall take 1 out of every 50 of the persons. So now it's been bumped up to 2% shall be taken. The oxen, the donkeys, the flocks, and all the livestock, and give them to the Levites who are in charge of the tabernacle of the Lord. So Eleazar himself gets to take on, all of the spoil from the warriors himself. But the 2% that's taken from the rest of Israel is going to go to the whole priesthood and all the Levites. Moses and Eleazar the priest did just as the Lord commanded Moses. The plunder that remained from the spoils of war from the warriors that the warriors had taken was 675,000 sheep. That is a lot. 72,000 head of cattle, 61,000 donkeys, and 32,000 persons in all of the Midianite women who were virgins. The half share of the portion of those who went to war was 337,500 sheep in number. The Lord's levy tax was 675. So out of the 337,500 that the warriors got to keep, the Lord only wants 675. That's crazy that the Lord only wants that much. When we find out later on in verse 49, your servants have counted the warriors under our command, and not one man of us is missing. They went out to war and they slaughtered every single man from Midian and didn't lose one single guy. If that's not evidence of God waging this war against an evil people on behalf of his people, I don't know what is. The half share of the portion went, we read that. Verse 37, the Lord's levy tax of the sheep was 675. The cattle was 36,000. The Lord's levy tax was 72. The donkeys were 30,500. The Lord's levy was 61. And the persons were 16,000, from whom the Lord's levy was 32 persons. Now, I'm not saying that Eleazar is going to marry these 32 women. It's likely that they just became servants in his household. Moses gave the levy, which was the Lord's offering, to Eleazar the priest, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. And we see, this time and again where the man of God, whoever that is in Scripture, is worthy of double honor over and over, because he bears the responsibility of the souls of the people that he is serving, the ones that he's been given charge over. Paul will say later on, you should not desire to be teachers, because those who are teachers of the word will be judged twice as harsh when we stand before God someday. And so it's a big deal to be the leader. It's a big deal. As for the Israelites' half, which was Moses, which Moses separated from that of the warriors, the congregation's half was 337,500 sheep, 36,000 cattle, 30,500 donkeys, 16,000 people. Again, that's, women. And from the Israelites' half, Moses took out 1 of every 50. So again, 2% this time, both of them persons and animals, and gave them to the Levites who were in charge of the tabernacle of the Lord, just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then the officers who were over the thousands of the army, the commanders of the thousands and hundreds, approached Moses. They said to him, again, your servants have counted the warriors under us, our command, and not one of our men is missing. Not a single man from Israel died in this battle. It is miraculous. Miraculous. So we brought as an offering to the Lord what each man obtained: articles of gold, armlets, bracelets, signet rings, earrings, necklaces, to make atonement for ourselves before the Lord. Moses and Eleazar the priest took the gold from them, all the handmade articles. Here's what the Amplified says about these verses, the division of the prey, the booty among those who had gone to war and those who had not set a standard for future battles, the proportion that was regarded as the Lord's also became a standard. Verse 52, all the gold of the offering which they presented to the Lord from the commanders of thousands and hundreds was 16,750 shekels. So you have to think they kept all the coins and everything, but all the jewelry, all of the gold armlets, the necklaces, they're giving as a tribute and as an offering to the Lord. For the men of war had taken plunder, every man for himself. So Moses and Eleazar the priests received the gold from the commanders of thousands of hundreds and brought it to the tent of meeting, the tabernacle, as a memorial for the sons of Israel before the Lord. That was a good move on their part, I think. And so this is a heavy chapter. We're talking about justice on a statewide scale. This isn't just, one man's crime. This is the evil of a nation that the Lord is finally crushing. And you have to think about, it seems harsh to read it like this when we're watching the judgment happen, but what the Bible doesn't give us is a detailed list of all of their sins. It does for Israel, but we could take context clues from what was being told to them in Leviticus about what they were really involved in. And it's kind of like when a movie shows you how horrible a people is, and then they show you the justice later on, you feel justified in, what you're seeing. But if we were only to be kind of hinted at the evil that they did and then see this really harsh judgment, we often will feel pity and an overwhelming grace for them. And God had been gracious for generations, literally generations. But now they had gone past the point of no return. And so this was the reality. So now that the people have kind of faced the last group before they go over the Jordan River, they're going to start to talk about, how we're going to divide up the lands. They haven't conquered all the cities in Israel yet, but they know that God has given each of them into their hands. So they're starting to think about, where do we want to live? And two of the tribes are going to talk about where they want to live right now before they cross the Jordan River. So chapter 32, this is what it says. Again, except for Caleb and Joshua, I forgot them earlier when I said this. Except for Caleb and Joshua, at this point, the oldest people in Israel are 60 years old, while Moses is 120 years old. Some of you are probably really frustrated by the last 15 minutes because I left them out. But Caleb and Joshua would have been older in age, probably, I don't know, maybe 80 years old at this point, 90 years old, could have even been younger. But Caleb and Joshua are still around. Here's what it says, chapter 32. Now the sons of Reuben and Gad, and the sons of Gad had a very large herds of cattle, and they saw that the land of Jazer and the land of Gilead on the east side of the Jordan River, and indeed the place was suitable for raising livestock. So I'm going to pull up a map for us here. So now the people of Israel, they're across from Jericho. So they're all hanging out right here, just north of where the Dead Sea is, way south of the Sea of Galilee, right along the Jordan River. And they're hanging out on the east side right now. Joshua's going to be the one that takes them into the promised land and into the fight with Jericho. It's not really a fight, but they're hanging out right here on the other side of Jericho, just north of the Red Sea, or just north of the Dead Sea. And this is the land of Jazer, however you want to pronounce it. And we have the tribe of Gad, and we have the tribe of Reuben over here. They are looking around and going, you know what? The promised land sounds great, but I'm really liking what's over here. Really liking this side. So the sons of Gad and Reuben came to Moses and spoke to Moses, to Eleazar the priest, and to the leaders of the congregation, saying, the country around Ataroth, Dibon, Jazer, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliela, Sebam, Nebo, and Bayon. So, that's all these cities that we're seeing right here. So you can see Dibon right here and Heshbon right here, and this is the land of Jazer. They're talking about this area on the other side of the Jordan. The land which the Lord conquered before the congregation of Israel is a land suitable for livestock, and your servants have very large herds of livestock. They said, so they're asking for permission here. If we have found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants as a possession. Do not take us across the Jordan River. But Moses said to the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben, shall your brothers go to war while you sit here? Great question. Now, why are you discouraging the hearts of the Israelites from crossing over into the land which the Lord has given them? You have to think, if 2 out of the 12 tribes drop out, that's not 20%. That's 16% of your fighting force is now gone. This is what your fathers did when I sent them from Kadesh Barnea to see the land. So Moses is getting really upset with them right here. Moses, perhaps this is a moment where he's not really understanding what they're truly asking. They didn't really maybe get to finish their statement, but Moses is thinking back. This is kind of a history lesson here. Moses is thinking back to when he sent the 12 spies to spy out the land of Israel 40 years before. 10 of them come back and say, we can't do it. Only Joshua and Caleb say that we can. For when they went up to the valley of Eshcol and saw the land, they discouraged the hearts of the Israelites so that they did not go into the land which they had given them. And the Lord's anger was kindled on that day, and he swore an oath, saying, none of the men who came up from Egypt from 20 years old and upward shall see the land which I promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, because they have not followed me completely. God is very much, you're either all in or all out, because he was all in for you when he gave up his son for you. And in his death and resurrection, this horrific death on a cross, he completely gave himself all in for you. So if we're going to be married to each other, we're either all in or not at all. I'm not going to share you with anybody. I'm not going to borrow you out. I'm not going to split my attention with you. We are either for each other or we are against each other. So that's what the Lord means here, that they have not followed me completely. Except Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite and Joshua the son of Nun, for they have followed the Lord completely. So the Lord's anger was kindled against the sons of Israel, Jacob, and he made them wander in the wilderness for 40 years until the entire generation of those who had done evil in the sight of the Lord was destroyed. So little history lesson there. Now Moses is back to present. Now look, you, the tribes of Reuben and Gad, have risen up in your father's place a brood of sinful men. Moses is going off on these boys right now. And to add still more to the fierce anger of the Lord against Israel. For if you turn back from following him completely, he will once again leave them in the wilderness, and you will destroy all these people. Let me read that again. For if you turn back from following him completely now, he will once again leave them in the wilderness and destroy all these people. So all of this that we lost in the last number of years, it's all we're going to lose, or all that we gained back, we're going to lose it all again because of you guys. But the people of Reuben and Gad approached Moses and said, we will build sheepfolds here for our flocks and walled cities for our children, but we will be armed and ready to go to war before the other tribes of the Israelites, until they have brought them to their place, while our children live in the fortified cities because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until every one of the other sons of Israel has taken possession in his inheritance. So what they're saying is, listen, we're not saying that we want to just camp out here and stay here. The other 10 can move on and go without us. No, we're saying like we want to live here when it's all said and done. We want to build sheepfolds here. We want to build small cities for our families. We as the fighting men will go forward with you. If it takes years, it takes years. We won't stop until it's all done. But once it's done, we want to come back to here. For we will not inherit with them on the west side of the Jordan and beyond, because of our inheritance has come to us on this side of the Jordan River toward the east. Moses replied this. We see a lot of if-then statements on behalf of Moses and the Lord, really. If you will do as you say, if you will arm yourselves before the Lord for war, and every armed man of yours will cross the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven out his enemies before them, and the land of the Jordan is subdued before the Lord, then afterward you shall return and be blameless in this matter before the Lord and before Israel, and this land east of the Jordan shall be yours as a possession before the Lord. So Moses is now understanding what they've asked here. But if you do not do this, behold, you will have sinned against the Lord, and be sure your sin will find you out. That's a really good message for us just in general, that it doesn't matter how well you hide your sin will find you out. In that The punishment for sin is going to find you out, that everything done in secret will be shouted from the rooftops. That's what Proverbs says. Build yourselves cities for your children and folds for your sheep, and do that which you have spoken. Hold to your word. Then the descendants of Gad and Reuben said to Moses, your servants will do just as my Lord commands. Our children, our wives, our livestock, and all our cattle shall live there in the cities of Gilead. But your servants, the fighting men, will cross over, every man armed for war, before the Lord to the battle, just as my Lord says. So Moses gave the command concerning them to Eleazar the priest, to Joshua the fathers' households of the tribes of the Israelites. Moses said to them, if the sons of Gad and Reuben will cross over the Jordan with you, every man armed for battle before the Lord, and the land is subdued before you, then you shall give the land of Gilead east of the Jordan River as a possession. So the Lord is agreeing to their terms, But if they will not cross over with you armed, they shall have possession. But if they will not cross over with you armed, they shall have possessions among you in the land of Canaan, and surrender their right to the land east of the Jordan. So if they don't cross over with you, all this area over here that they want, deals off. You have to split up somewhere in this area, The Lord's very serious about this. Sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben answered, as the Lord has said to your servants, so we will do. We will cross over, armed before the Lord, into the land of Canaan, so that the possession of our inheritance on the east side may be ours. So Moses gave to them the sons of Gad and the sons of Reuben, the half tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdom of Sihon, the kingdom of the Amorites, the kingdom of Og, the king of Bashan, the land with its cities, its territories, the cities, the surrounding land. We also see half of Manasseh also says, we also want to stay on the side. They're kind of bundled up into, Gad and Reuben. You can see it just fine on this map that they're a really big tribe, I guess, but they also were wanted to be part of this deal. So we see East Manasseh, we see Gad, we see Reuben. They all want to be on the east side of the Jordan. So the Lord agrees to their terms, as long as they fight with the rest of Israel. Sons of Gad built Dibon, Ataroth, Aroer, Atroth, Shaphan, Jazer, Jogbehah, Beth Nimrah, Beth Haran, for fortified walled cities and sheepfolds for sheep. Once again, thank you for listening to me try to pronounce all of these Hebrew cities. Beth Nimrah, Beth Haran, fortified cities and sheepfolds for their sheep. The sons of Reuben built Heshbon, Elealeh, Kiriathaim, Nebo, and Baal Maon. Their names have been changed. And Sibmah, which they gave other names to the cities which they had built. The sons of Machir, the son of Manasseh, went to Gilead and took it and drove out the Amorites who were in it. So Moses gave Gilead to the tribe of Machir, the son of Manasseh, and they settled in it. Gilead is, let's see if it's on this map. Jabesh Gilead, that's up here. So Manasseh goes up and they take out all of the peoples that were in Gilead right here in the center, still on the east side of the Jordan, and Moses gives them that city as well. The sons of Jair, the sons of Manasseh, went and took its towns, the 10 villages, and called them Havoth Jair. Noba went and took I'm butchering this last verse. Noba went and took Kenath and its villages and called it Noba after his own name. Nice flex. So again, they're starting to split up the cities. It's been 40 years coming. They were wandering around in this area down here for a long, long time. For 40 years, they've kind of moved their way up through Moab, and now they're all hanging out right here, just south of the Sea of Galilee, right on the northern edge of the Dead Sea, across from Jericho. And Gad and Reuben and Manasseh, at least half of them, are saying, we want to stay on this side. We really like it over here, which is honestly, it's kind of dumb in my opinion. I mean, this is just the Bible according to Jac, but all of this is coastland. This is, beautiful beaches. This is access to the Mediterranean. This is shipping. This is the chance to have trade with the rest of the world first, and be the first to do it from Israel. They haven't even seen what the other side looks like yet, and they're settling for it. And I talked about it with my church here a couple weeks ago that, if you are satisfied with what the Lord has already done, he will allow you to remain satisfied. We talked about it with trying to put new cloth into an old garment, or trying to put new wine into an old wineskin. That as long as you're trying to squeeze the new thing that God is doing into what he's done in the past, you're just going to tear it apart at the seams. And Jesus says at the end of that, he says, no one who drinks the old wine then desires new wine, for he says the old wine is good. It seems like Reuben and Gad, seems like they're kind of settled for this side. I've never been there, so I don't know if this side is really that much greater or that much worse than the rest of Israel over here. But they were satisfied with what was on this side, so God allowed them to be satisfied with this side. They didn't get to enjoy Mount Carmel. They don't get to enjoy the coastland, all these rivers and tributaries here. They don't get to enjoy that. Perhaps larger cities that they could have moved into, more fortified ones they could have protected themselves with. All of this was, available for them, but they were happy with what's over here. So Lord allowed them to be happy with what was over there. So again, don't ever allow yourself to be satisfied. The Lord has no shortage of anointing. The Lord has no shortage of joy, no shortage of miracles, no shortage of financing, and no shortage of land. And whatever it is that you're needing in your life that he's promised you, don't be satisfied with what he did before. It's not to say that what he did before wasn't great. I'm so glad for everything that God did in the last century, but I want to see what God wants to do with this generation. He wants to do something new. And so don't allow yourself to settle. Don't allow yourself to settle. So that's the end of chapter 32. We're going to be in chapter 33 next time. We are just a couple. We're actually 2 episodes away from starting out Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, again, just like Numbers, has so many stories that we don't hear in church all that often because we just don't read Deuteronomy all that often. We kind of get lost in all of the names and maybe some of the priestly duties, but there is so much packed into these books that we miss out on if we just ignore them altogether. And so stay tuned for next episode, of course, next week. And I will see you guys soon. Thanks for watching. Oh, last thing to say. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. I always forget to say this. It really helps us. Please leave any comments. And we're glad that you got to hear the Bible today. We'll see you soon.